So I'm wearing my glasses today because I'm in nerd mode. Although when am I ever not in nerd mode? Uh, Probably a lot of times actually. But anyway, in my last video, I was talking about these two verses that I found in Exodus, and uh, it's Exodus 17. No, it's Exodus 13 verses 17 and 18, and this is talking about the people of Israel being led out of Egypt, specifically through the wilderness, which took them 40 years or whatever, and not through what would have been a shorter route. And what I was fascinated with was God saying, lest they repent when they see war and return to Egypt. So God had this understanding of the people of Israel, and their potential for returning to Egypt if they met any kind of warfare or difficulty or whatever, and therefore leading them through the long the long and otherwise treacherous wilderness, right? So I thought this was so fascinating because I did not realize that this was God's intention. And I always feel the need to say I'm not some kind of evangelist or Bible scholar or anything like that. I'm simply sharing how I read the Bible and why I read the Bible, which is probably different from how many people read the Bible. Yes, I'm a believer in God, but I don't necessarily I'm not necessarily bothered about this specific nature. Well, no, I'm interested in the nature of it, but I'm not bothered by a varied interpretation of what God is, right? So it's not important to me that other people think of God the same way that I think of God, because I don't even totally know what I think of God. But anyway, so why I read the Bible is because I'm interested in history and in philosophy and ethics and morals and or at least the study of these things and culture, right? And how culture has changed, and certainly the Bible and these stories have had such an impact on global culture. I think it's, to me, an obvious thing to be curious about. But anyway, so I thought I would just sort of share kind of how I go down my own little rabbit hole about these things. So, as I was saying, the last video I made was about my discovery of these two verses and my astonishment at the fact that God had known that the people would repent if they saw war, and therefore intentionally led them through the land of the wilderness or whatever. And so that's just sparked a general deeper curiosity about I guess the intention of this character of God. So I just paid more attention to the verse, and I realized that there seems to be a kind of a discrepancy. Well, not a discrepancy, but there's a variation in translation in the verse. So where it says the Israelites. So I read the King James version of the Bible, and I sort of explained in the last video why I do that. It's because I get to learn a lot of new words, because the way that the King James version presents or uses certain words, or it's often very curious to me, and I don't understand, and it makes me go and look up things that I wouldn't have normally thought to look into. So the King James version says that the children of Israel went up harnessed out of the land of Egypt. So harnessed, I don't really know what that means. I know what a harness is, but I've never used a harness in my life. So I'm like, it's kind of a vague thing. So something like that would trigger my tendency to go and look at the other versions of this, which I do all the time. So when I find a verse interesting, I go, oh, let me see what the New International Version says, or what the whatever other versions say. And I go, oh, sometimes I find these curious variations in use of words, and this is one of them. So King James Version says, the children of Israel went up harnessed out of the land of Egypt. But there's a New King James Version which says, in orderly ranks out of the land of Egypt. So instead of harnessed, it's the New King James says, in orderly ranks. In the New American Version, it says, the children went up out of the land of Egypt arrayed for battle. Okay. And there's another version as well that says ready for battle. So I go, okay. We go from harnessed out of the land of Egypt to in orderly ranks. That I don't. The word harnessed does not immediately suggest anything to me about orderliness or rankedness or anything like that. So clearly the people who were writing the King James Version have a different understanding of the word harnessed. Okay, that's interesting. Then there's another version that says arrayed for battle. Arrayed for battle. Okay. Why this is very curious to me is because in the previous verse it says that God said, lest peradventure the people repent when they see war and return to Egypt. Right? So God knows that these people are not capable of battle. So why would this New American Version say arrayed for battle when in the previous verse it clearly says they're not capable of it? What's going on here? What I could not square. It was simply enough when the word was harnessed. Okay, so maybe if I had simply looked up the definition of the word harnessed, it might have said something like having some type of equipment that's meant for carrying something or whatever attached to you. I would have gone, okay, fine. But the different versions that suggest some type of readiness for battle, when the previous verse says they were not capable of it, this is to me a discrepancy that I just could not let go of, right? So I was like, cool, I need to research this some more, and I pulled up my favorite trusted research assistant, ChatGPT. Thank God for ChatGPT these days, right? So I put all of this just into the thing, and this is what it came up with, right? So it starts out by saying, you're absolutely right to notice that the differences, thank you, you're absolutely right to notice that differences in translations of Exodus 13:18, especially around the phrase ready for battle or in orderly ranks, can significantly impact how we interpret the Israelites' departure from Egypt. Yes. This isn't just stylistic, it's tied to how translators interpret a single Hebrew word. The word being translated variously is hamushim. This word occurs only a few times in the Old Testament and is somewhat ambiguous, which leads to the variation in English Bibles. So possible meanings of hamushim. One is armed or equipped for battle. This is traditional understanding supported by the root hamsh, which translates to the number 5, possibly indicating being armed with 5 weapons or being in 5s, i.e. military divisions. Oh, interesting. Fascinating. So, okay, I mean, this makes me want to go down a whole different rabbit hole, which I'm not going to right now, but There's something about fives, the root word of it being five. I wonder if there is some type of symbology here. I mean, I would need to see how credible that really is. The root word meaning five, or in fives, or armed with fives, or something like that. But still though, I know the Bible is uh, riddled with symbology and numerology and all of these things. So that's very interesting. Second meaning is in ranks or orderly groups. Another interpretation links it more generally to military formation without implying literal weaponry or combat readiness. Ah, I see. Interesting. So 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 there is a version of interpretation here that is saying that being in orderly groups, or in sort of in a military style formation, um, but without necessarily meaning having literal weaponry or combat readiness, which would square with the previous verse, because God did say these people are not ready for war. So that is making more sense, for sure. And third meaning is one fifth. Some rabbinic interpretations suggest that only one fifth of the Israelites left Egypt. Oh, interesting. Which is more figurative and less commonly accepted in modern translations. Okay, still. Hmm. So, um, right. So this comes down to So this is very interesting. So to me, this is because a lot of the times these variations in translation are uh, fairly uh, uninteresting. Like they're like, oh, okay, cool. It's just sort of switching one word for another, and it sort of has a pretty much the same meaning. Um, but this is definitely an element of that, but also to me, there's a material implication on uh, the content of the story here, because in orderly ranks favors a military style formation, not necessarily combat ready. So no, the question is, if they're not combat ready, as you say in the previous verse, that they're not ready for combat because they would, if they meet war, they will run back to Egypt. If you know that they're not combat ready, but you still want them to be in military formation, now that's interesting to the story, to me. um, why this matters? Isn't ChatGPT just perfect? It's a little bit too perfect. Um, right, you're right that this isn't a trivial difference. The translation affects how we see the readiness of the Israelites. Were they equipped to fight, or just organized and moving in formation, not necessarily military trained? Right, obviously they were not militarily trained, right? And everything about the story up until now does suggest that these people have no military capability, and then God quite clearly says, yeah, they'll run back to Egypt if they meet war. Um, God's intention and their vulnerability. Verse 17 says, God didn't lead them through Philistine territory because they might turn back if they see war, right? Implying they weren't battle ready. But then it says, yes, exactly. So which is it? Um, if they were armed, it raises the question, why avoid conflict if they were ready? Well, I don't know. But if they were merely organized, it fits with God needing to train and transform them spiritually and communally, before entering Canaan. Wow! Now that is actually quite clarifying. It fits with God needing to train and transform them spiritually and communally before entering Canaan. So if you think, well, why would, if you know that they're not ready for combat, and indeed you're making a decision to lead them the long way because you know that if they meet warfare, they're going to run back. But still, even though you're leading them through the long way, you want them to be in a military style formation, because you want to train and transform them spiritually and communally before entering Canaan. Damn, that's wild. That is, you see, I would never have gotten to that had I just sort of, you know, skirted past the verse and just go, oh, okay, cool. Like, this is all from a curiosity about the word harnessed. I mean, and again, I mean, you do not get that from the word harnessed. That is a very, um, I mean, well, I don't know what the intention. I don't know that there's necessarily like a malicious intention behind that, or it's just. I mean, the King James version is written in the 1600s, right? Um, so this is like what Elizabethan type language. So it could well be that the way that they would have interpreted the word harness could have meant this. It's not how I would have ever thought of that word. No. Uh, that's so interesting. Anyway, so no, like this gives me a kind of again, like I said in the previous video, uh, a different. Oh, I mean, it adds an entirely new element for me, um, that I had not ever considered in this story. Again, having heard this so many times, from preachers and lecturers and researchers and other YouTubers and movies and documentaries, and everybody's talking. There's so much talk around this story, and yet I never considered God's intention, to lead them through the wilderness, right? That God wanted them to go that way, and that it wasn't just their own sort of like lostness, or at least not only that, and two, no, all because of a single word. Um, there is there was also the intention for them to begin to become organized, even though uh, you're not capable yet for war, ready yet. You now need to begin to be organized and ready, uh, and at least in that formation. That's pretty, to me. That's like a really good find, I feel. um, Very interesting. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So this is me sharing how I kind of do. I mean, this is what I do all the time, which is why I read the Bible so slowly, because one verse, one word in a verse can lead me down to so many rabbit holes. And there's a few other things that I want to look into. This whole connection with the five business. I want to figure some more. I want to research that some more. Um, but yeah, so I figured maybe I'll just share a little bit about uh, how I read the Bible, why I read it, and I guess the reason I'm doing this is because I do recognize that people can be uncomfortable sometimes with the Bible, and I understand why, because it's often used in such a forceful way, right? There's usually when someone is quoting a Bible verse, or referencing the Bible in any way, it's to prove some kind of a judgmental point that they have about something, and thou shalt not do this because so I get it. I get why people are uncomfortable with that, and I don't think that's a valid way to use a book like this. Because you I mean you sort of, it's like having a huge uh um cake or something, but only scooping off a little piece of the icing, It's like, okay, yeah, you could use it to judge somebody, I suppose, if you wanted to, but why not? Why not use it to inspire yourself and to educate yourself and to learn more about uh, people and culture of a different time and perhaps find some kind of enlightenment about your own life? Because actually I really think all these stories are about human day to day endeavors, right? I think it's just about life in general. I think they're all sort of metaphors for how we go through different types of struggles in our lives, and whoever these people are that wrote all this stuff down, uh, figured out really complex metaphors and symbols and little stories to kind of codify all of this uh, reasoning that they must have come to at some point. And now and because some people found that these stories were also useful for oppression and judgment and that kind of thing. We know associated with that naturally, but I think it's like to me it's like a pack of cards or something. Like I think you should have one in your house, and maybe if, just like if somebody comes over, you open it up and see what's inside and go, hey, what do you think about this? And I don't know how to play poker, but I have a pack of cards in my house. If somebody comes over, we can play cards. We can play around. We can just shuffle and think. We can make a house of cards if we wanted to, or we could do whatever. Um, and I think in the same way, the Bible is to me non-threatening. It's kind of like, yeah, it's there. There's some interesting stuff in it. You can formulate your own uh, inquiry into it, and if you have the right posture, which is uh, seeking for understanding rather than arming yourself with judgment, then you'll discover so much more out of it. So I think I'll probably do more like this because bro, my my rabbit holes. I have so many so many uh, uh, open journeys that I've only uh, taken a few steps down. I'm like I still have to return to that one and to that one and to this one. Um, so this is pretty I think harmless and fairly simple, but there's some pretty heavy stuff in here. Very 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 complex and curious things that I just find uh, uh, riveting. And yeah, so cool. I'll share some more, and thank you for watching. Hope you found it interesting, and leave some stuff in the comments or whatever.